Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Get Geek podcast, where we celebrate geek, nerd, and pop culture. Each week, we deliver the best analysis for fans, by fans, on anything related to movies, TV, video games, comics, anime, and manga. We talk geek. And now, here's the Get Geek podcast. Hello, listeners in the United States and around the world. This is the Get Geek podcast. We are all back together again, I think for the first time in 2022. I'm your host, Walt, and we have Jose, Gabe, AJ, and Eli. Guys, say hello.
Goodbye.
Hello.
Again?
¿Cómo estamos?
Deja vu over here. AJ's just trying to leave the cast already.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if anyone's going to be trying to leave the cast today, I think we all know who it's going to be.
Oof.
Wow.
Starting some
Already.
beans.
Starting early.
Ooh.
Already.
Interesting.
Nice.
Gabe,
I'm liking where
Harold.
this is going.
What are we talking about today?
Nothing.
We are going to be talking about the Book of Boba Fett.
Okay.
And the overall general problem with the Star Wars fandom.
Oh, we're gonna throw that in there.
Yeah,
I
because this is
I
actually
wonder
probably
why.
the best example of it.
I wonder why.
Wow.
Well, before we
Already.
do that, I think we should get our maintenance out of the way and give a shout out to all our fans. And guys, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this awesome little podcast that we have here. It's about as geeky a podcast as you can get. That's why we call it Get Geek. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Anyway. All right. We're done.
At least you remembered the name of the podcast, unlike myself. What was it, last week? A couple weeks ago, where I'm just
Listen, we're
naming random
involved-
podcasts.
We're involved in like how many podcasts here,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we have the Get Geek podcast. We have Positively Single.
I name dropped my own
Cynical,
podcast, like
which
a
is
doofus.
yours, right? We do have the CrossGen podcast, which is AJ, Eli, and
Finally coming
myself.
back.
Yeah, and we also have what was formerly the Arena, which is a sports podcast. It's now redirected and renamed the Gabe and Walt Show. So, listen,
Talents 55 Productions.
there you go. So it's very easy to kind of confuse everything because we're doing all these things, right?
We're bigger than Prestige worldwide, so I mean, we're trying to be.
All right. Anyway,
All
let's
right,
get
what do you
started
guys say?
because I think we have a
Yeah.
lot to cover, right?
We have quite a bit to cover. It's hard
Yeah.
for me to even really find a starting point because we've already kind of discussed this. I don't want to say at length because it's opinions and thoughts on the show have been pretty well stated, even though we have tried to, I guess, stay away from the conversation until this podcast itself. But ripping the Band-Aid off, what are your general impressions of the Book of Boba Fett? I'll give mine, I guess, last, just because I feel like I'm probably going to be the only one on the positive side of things, clearly.
Well, do you want to go from bad to worse, or like the opposite direction? Because you kind of seem.
You guys can
I think we know.
choose how you guys want to, give me your thoughts.
All right.
Eli
I
can go ahead and
guess-
go first.
Oh.
Eli can go first.
This is going to be the most hurtful one.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
Talk about ripping the Band-Aid off.
if Eli wants to troll, he can go ahead and troll. Disclaimer: Eli is trolling here.
Possibly, maybe. So, Book of Boba Fett. Man, okay. I don't know where to start with this. It's Jesus. I don't want to make this respectfully. It's bad. That's all I have to say. Especially the last few episodes. Like, honestly,
Why is it
just
bad?
wasn't. Huh? Okay. It was bad because, I mean, the plot was like very whack. Boba Fett didn't really live up to what he was supposed to be. Just the plot was overall cringe and just horrible in every way. The action scenes were like pretty lame considering They had like so many. There were so many things that they could have done. Character is not being fully developed. Well, overdeveloped actually. In some ways.
Interesting, overdeveloped.
Characters returning that I didn't want to return. To, and there's multiple characters of that. Just overall, it didn't seem like Book of the Boba Fett anymore. Um, kind of seemed like just a backdoor to Mandalorian season 3. That's really all there is to that. Yeah.
Well, that we know. Yeah.
Yeah, but
All right. So here's the thing. As much as I absolutely hated the last 3 episodes and loved them at the same time, which is a really weird thing to say, except for that last episode, I have to give credit where it's due. I loved where the show started, and that was with the Tusken Raiders. But the whole show fell by the wayside the moment it decided to put Boba Fett, the main character, by the wayside. It was a terrible choice in terms of directing and writing. Like, uh, I just like, I'm not even a fan of Boba Fett. You all know that, and I'm still angry at what this show has done. And that's all I'm gonna say for now.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. I didn't expect that exactly from you, to be honest. Which is going to lead me to a question I'm going to want to ask you then. So a little bit later. But why don't we get
Okay.
Jose and Walter thoughts too?
So this is one of the most conflicted, if not the most conflicted review I ever have to give, because like pretty much everybody else in the crew, there were some episodes that I actually enjoyed immensely. Um, if you know, if y'all recall, early on, the first 2 episodes, I was with Wolfie, and I thought that they were pretty fantastic. We thought that they were great, maybe for different reasons.
Mhm.
But I was really enjoying the first 2 episodes, and then we all kind of talked about when it went off the rails for me, and it never fully recovered in a way, and it did in another. Uh, but like AJ said, the problem was that even though we knew this was supposed to be something that was going to set up, further adventures and maybe like an MCU style of Star Wars universe with the Mandalorian and with all these other shows that are coming out soon, like Ahsoka and things of that nature. We all knew that was going to happen, but the fact that you sideline the main character, that people have been waiting to hear his story in celluloid on film for like 40 years, to hear what happened to him, to see what happened to him. And then yeah, they just sidelined him completely. There was one episode where he was there and he didn't have a line of dialogue. And then there was a whole episode and a half where he did not even appear. His second in command said more than he did in a couple of these episodes in Fennec Shand. And I know that Tamara Morrison had said something about Boba Fett, wanting Boba Fett to speak less, but that might have been a bit of too much in that direction. So I really enjoyed a lot of the episodes. I'm so upset about the fact that in the end, I'm disappointed by this show because of the fact mainly, and I'll turn it to Walt to see what you think, but mainly the fact that they sidelined the main character that I was really enjoying his story in the first couple of episodes, especially those flashback scenes that I think a couple of us have talked about. Walt, what about you?
All right. Well, I think out of all of us, I've been probably Eli not included. I've probably been a little bit more critical of the series from jump. I really struggled with connecting with the events that was going on within the series itself, and it's interesting that Jose mentioned that the flashbacks to me were easily the best part of the series. And it's probably what I was expecting out of this series to begin with. This show for me really feels like a shoehorning in a sense. And I know Gabe, you're probably going to take issue with what I'm about to say, but I think what happened here is this show was really like a shoehorning of Boba Fett back into the Star Wars consciousness in terms of what they're trying to do right now. I think once they brought him back in The Mandalorian, they said, hey, let's make a show about him. And then at that point, they said the concept was great. Let's bring him back. They just didn't know what to do with him, because if you look at what happened in his arc, he went from being a bounty hunter to being a Tusken Raider to being a crime boss to being a happy mayor. And I think, Gabe, you mentioned he's probably going back to be a bounty hunter. I didn't get that from the
Possibly.
last show, but that last episode. But what was kind of the point of the show if that was the case? If you were going to start him and end him in the same place, then what did we accomplish? How does this move the Star Wars universe forward? And to me, it doesn't. And so I like I said, I really struggled to connect with the character, and I really, really fell off with episode 5 and 6, which, ironically enough, to me were the best two episodes of the series, and it did not feature Boba Fett. And so for that to me, in my opinion, is damning when your best episodes don't feature the character that's on the title of the show. So I really did try and give the show a chance. It just never lived up to any expectation that I had, period. And so I'm very disappointed, and I'm frankly sad for all the Boba Fett fans out there, because I believe they should have treated the character better, and they didn't.
Well, I mean, I definitely agree that I think they definitely could have treated him a little bit better, but I think that, like, Boba Fett fans, and maybe some other Star Wars fans might see it from a different purview, and I think that when I mentioned at the opening of the cast that this is kind of like what I think is the problem with the Star Wars fandom as a whole is that there's kind of we're always only on two extremes of the spectrum. There's no one really ever in the middle. And the way that I looked at the show is, the expectation I had wasn't necessarily for it to move Star Wars forward. I mean, we're all the series that we see are in the gaps. We're filling in the gaps. But the whole point, to answer that question of, like, like, what was the point of the show, which I'm seeing from a lot of, people on, online and stuff like that, which
Mm.
I would assume aren't necessarily Boba Fett fans, is that the whole point of the show is to let the Boba Fett fans know what happened. Not necessarily to, like, if anything, I would look at it more as a prequel, or a prologue to Boba Fett, because this is just letting us know these 40 years, yeah, maybe not the best story that they could have told about Boba Fett, but they're just answering the question of what happened to Boba Fett. It doesn't have to move the story forward yet, the way that I look at it. And that's why, when I saw, especially with the the flashback sequences and stuff like that, I loved it because it answered the questions for me. You know, maybe not exactly what I wanted necessarily. But I loved what they did. Kind of doing the whole, Last Samurai kind of angle and all that stuff. Because I love the Last Samurai, so I really, really enjoyed the second episode a lot. Um, but it was just fulfilling that one question that we've always had, which is what happened to Boba Fett, and also canonizing the fact that he's, alive, right? Because in the expanded universe, he was alive. He came out of Sarlacc pit. He lost his armor. Cobb Vanth had it. The way that I look at this is to essentially bring to real life all of that stuff, so that then in the future we can move on and, like, give him the real meat of the story. I think maybe calling it Book of Boba Fett maybe not the best title given the content of the series. Um, I would have called it maybe Boba Fett the epilogue. I mean the prologue rather, because that's the way that I looked at it. Like, the real Boba Fett story doesn't start until now, I think, until the end of the show. There's a lot of things that I definitely didn't like. I definitely hated the Vespa Rangers. I think that was probably the absolute worst decision that they could have done, is to introduce these younger completely out of place hipsters on Tatooine. It just makes no sense whatsoever. They're as out of place as hipsters in Bushwick. Okay, if anything, I look at Bushwick and Tatooine as the same, kind of like a place that used to be a dump, and now we have like a bunch of people dressed up in funny colors with funny looking mopeds and bikes and stuff, and what's out of place is going to be always be out of place. Um, but if you take the Vespa Rangers out of the picture, the biggest issue that I had with the show was really not giving me Boba Fett for 2 episodes. Give me 5 episodes of Boba Fett is kind of crappy. You know, just because that the gap of having essentially 3 weeks, with between Boba Fett storylines is just too great. So but aside from that, I thought the show was great because it answered a lot of the questions that we have. A lot of the early criticisms, I with like story decisions and stuff like that, I didn't agree with. Like, yeah, like a lot of people, like, AJ, you just said that, like, Boba Fett just wasn't Boba Fett, right? But that was part of the storyline. you know he didn't start being like Boba Fett until he was fully healed, quote and unquote, and they kind of put that in the storyline, right? But it's
Mhm.
just like, if you don't if you don't see those parts, then it's kind of like, how are you supposed to, you know I guess, accept it, so to speak. So but those are my thoughts. My general thoughts are that I enjoyed the show, with the exception of 2 missing Boba Fett episodes and the Vespa Rangers, so to speak. So um but I mean, if those are my biggest issues, what were you, if you could pinpoint one? I mean, if we can kind of go around real quick, and like whoever wants to chime in at any point, just so that we don't, turn this into like a huge, I guess,
Hate fest.
um a what?
A hate fest.
Yeah, let's not turn it into a hate fest necessarily, but
Yeah.
like one good thing, one bad thing that you guys, if there is a good thing, you know, that you took away from the show. I mean, before we go, does anybody understand like the point of view that I'm coming from?
A little, although there are
Somewhat.
some things that I could certainly be back against, but I
Yeah.
can see a little bit where you're coming from.
It, it
Because
it's
that's
it's kind of like the thing that I had posted on the chat. There was a quote that I thought was really relevant to this.
hmm
Um, if you're a fan of something, you can easily overlook, plot holes and inconsistencies and things like that, and you'll enjoy the show. And I think
hmm
you fall in that category. I think I fall in the other category where, I wasn't as vested into the show as I wanted to be and I tried to
hmm
be. So for me, plot holes, inconsistencies, things of that nature, they really, really stood out in my mind. Like
but
there
the
were
thing
there
is,
were
like,
things, and so like I said, it's all gonna be your level of
hmm
what you want from the show. And if you're a fan of the thing of the character and you're a fan of the show, you'll be more easy to kind of overlook those things. Whereas I'm not as connected to Boba Fett as you are, so I'm looking at it purely on a high level, and I see these things, and those things kind of annoyed me about the show, to be
well,
honest.
but the thing is, I'm
So
not I'm not disagreeing with you on plot holes and inconsistencies, but it just
right.
didn't take away enough of the
But that's what I'm
enjoyment for
saying.
me.
Because you are a Boba Fett fan, you're willing to say, okay, I get that these things are there, but because I'm happy to see Boba Fett, I'm willing to overlook it. And I'm sure that if there was a Darth Maul show, I'd be doing the same thing you are, where it's
See,
like, you
but
know what,
but
yeah, I'm
that's what I'm
happy
trying
to
to say.
see him. So
That, that
that's why.
that's what I'm trying to say, though. It's not because I'm a Boba Fett fan that I enjoy it, because I think that for me, like, it doesn't matter if it's a Boba Fett show or not. I can still find enjoyment even if it's not consistent, or I mean, I can enjoy Fast and Furious films. you know I can enjoy like plenty of
But
properties,
that's
and
Fast and the Furious is meant to be kind of wacky and crazy. We
I
know
guess
for a fact
now,
we're
yes,
Yeah.
going
sure.
into that
I'm just
that
okay.
we're
Maybe that's not the
expecting
best.
cars jumping off buildings. We're not expecting that from Boba Fett. We're expecting a
Right, right, right.
narrative that is serious enough and takes the character in context and says, you know what, this is a character that everybody loves. Let's treat him as such, and I think that's the difference between those two.
Right, but what I was trying to say, and I know that AJ wants to jump in. I want to push this over to AJ, but it's important for me that that you understand what I look at again as the biggest problem in the Star Wars fandom is that
Mhm.
like if you don't love it, then you have to hate it, and that's like I didn't, sure
I don't hate it
it's a
though. I
Yeah,
think
but
you're
hold on.
misconstruing our problems with the series as hate. Well,
yeah, we're
I
not.
enjoyed it. I
I'm
enjoyed it.
disappointed in it.
I think that it was
I
a
think that's the
failure of
better word.
storytelling at the same time because
Yeah.
if anybody went through any character progression in this series, the only people that did that were Mando and Grogu. Not Boba Fett, not Fennec Shand, not any of the side characters. Nobody went through any real character progression because they abandoned that after the second episode. Boba Fett was the daimyo at the beginning, and he wanted to rule with respect at the beginning, and he was a daimyo by the end, and he wanted to rule with respect by the end. Nothing changed. The only thing that changed was
I
a little bit
mean,
of that character that we know from the Return of the Jedi and the Empire Strikes Back to where he went by the end of the second episode because of experiences with the Tusken Raiders. But like I said before, that was unfinished territory. They just killed them off screen, and then they had this tease where like the female Tusken Raider, who was the most powerful warrior in the tribe, was not there among the dead. And the small child also, the Tusken child was not there among the dead. And maybe they'll show up in season 2, whatever. I don't know. But like they pulled these bait and switches throughout the show. And then the other issue that I have is that Boba Fett was this hyper intelligent, cunning, skilled bounty hunter who was the only one when Han Solo had the idea to attach to the back of that Star Destroyer bridge to get away from the Empire, and the Empire Strikes Back. The whole Empire didn't think about how they were trying to didn't think about how they would try to sneak away, and Boba Fett was the only one who was able to outsmart everybody. Everybody. He's an idiot on this show. He's an absolute moron. He makes all the stupidest decisions. And one example that I'll give, and then I'll open it up to whoever wants to speak, is why on earth would you wait to bring the Rancor into battle? That is one of the dumbest decisions. And on the other side, for the Pikes not to bring in those gigantic robots to shoot at Boba Fett and his small crew instead of getting dozens of themselves killed. Dozens. He's a moron on this show. Fennec Shand is the one who should be the daimyo because she's the smart one. Yeah. So that's
AJ.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to chime in with this really quick. With regards to like the fan and the character thing, I'm just going to say this one thing. So we all know that Obi-Wan is a show that's going to be coming out in May, right? No matter how much I love Darth Vader, they're going to do something in that show which, hey, you know what? It'll probably be a boss fight scene. It probably will.
Yeah.
But you know what? Even though I'm a very fervent Darth Vader fan, the fact that they're going to break the canon just to give us the fight of the century, I can't reconcile with that. Even as a fan, I have to go, you know what? There is something wrong with this. So, like, I mean, I guess, okay, I'm not saying you can't like the Book of Boba Fett, and I'm not really trying to say, oh, you have to hate it. But there are some things that go on here, like, come on, man, really? It's like everyone else has been saying. I liked it, but then it completely and utterly disappointed me.
I mean,
Um,
I understand it. I totally get it. I would say that that's not what it seemed like in any of the chats. But I guess I'll accept it too. Eli, I want to know what you thought.
um,
Anything that you thought that was good that you
oh
liked.
well, honestly, I think the only thing that was really sort of good
Vespa
was
Rangers.
probably what? But like the only thing that was really good was like um I forgot his name, Chrysanthemum for like the
Black
first.
Chrysanthemum.
Yeah, Black Chrysanthemum for like the first half of the show. Like he was like somewhat cool for like the most part. But other than that, like really everything just derived into chaos. Like in the second episode, because I saw where they were going, but like it's hard to focus on two different stories at the same time. That's one of the things that I think um that's the reason why I think the show suffered. It's not that they didn't have enough time, it's just that they were wasting it heavily in the entire show. So like we didn't really get to see him we never really got to see what's his name? Boba Fett being a daimyo or anything like that. He held no power the entire show. Like nobody respected him
That's true.
whatsoever.
Yeah,
So
but he made a point of that though, didn't he? Didn't he say at the very end, like, we're not suited for this? He gave it a shot. He tried.
but as you guys said, what was the whole point of the entire show then? Like
To fill in the
if
gaps.
but it was just to serve that purpose, that one purpose, just to fill in the
Yeah,
gaps
that was the one
between
purpose. I mean,
Mandalorian season.
is it too far fetched to like give people, like,
But he
let
did,
people know what is going on through Boba Fett and what led him to where
but it
he's at?
wasn't. But the whole thing is, it wasn't about Boba Fett. It was just, like you said, it was just to fill in the gaps between season 2 Mandalorian and season 3 Mandalorian. We never got anything about Boba Fett this entire season.
What?
Okay,
You telling me we didn't get anything about
kind
Boba
of
Fett?
have, I kind of have a thing to say to that, and then I'm gonna throw it over to Walt really quick. But I think there was stuff with Boba Fett, but the problem is, like you guys are saying, he's going on about, there are a lot of stupid mistakes that happen in our industry. And I'm someone who's experienced that. And you know what? I feel like I can do a better job because I don't have to be a hotshot emotional moron like most of these kingpins are. So I can do it right. I can save lives. And then for the end of that to be, you know what? We tried, we failed. What is that?
I wouldn't say
That's
failed.
not good
Wait, hold on, hold on.
characterization
The only-
for
They-
Boba Fett.
It kind
The-
of did.
He
fail.
destroyed the
only-
town.
No.
Yeah.
He destroyed the
only
town. What did he succeed at? He
The
destroyed the
only
town and got a bunch of its
Technically,
citizens
Spice
killed.
would destroy-
Hold on. The only sense that of character development that I got, or anything like developing Boba Fett's story, was that he's supposed to retire now from like literally whatever the hell he's gonna do. He literally has no skills in being a bounty hunter, in being a daimyo. He can't lead people at this point. He should just retire at
Well,
this point.
I'll
Okay,
disagree
well-
with the bounty hunter stuff because he was the legendary Boba Fett.
Was.
So
Is
he
he
should
still-
have leaned back into that somehow.
Didn't he also
doesn't have the
lose
same,
every
but
fight?
he doesn't have the same fighting skills that he
Well,
used to have.
yeah, and I
He's
think
not the legendary.
He lost
Boba.
every fight.
yeah, and I think that's kind of the problem.
Everyone.
Because, and I hate to say it, they really
did
made
not.
him out to be a weak
Yeah, he did.
character because Fennec
Until
Shan
he-
was way more capable of
Exactly.
in the show than Boba Fett ever was. And it's funny because every single thing that Boba Fett, somebody in his universe would shoot him down and say, "No, that's wrong. You got to do this." Even in the last episode, the Vespa Riders, he said, "Well, we're going back to the Jabba the
Jabba's
Hutt's palace, right?" And they were like, "Nope." And he was like, "Well,
That was the
why?"
smarter
You
choice,
know?
also. Actually,
I know, but
the Vespa Riders
and
were stupid.
again, but again, they took away the agency of the character
Mhm.
because
I
every
don't think that that's
single
necessarily
thing that they
true.
did that he
I don't think
said
that that's true.
was overridden by somebody in his orbit.
Yeah.
That's the way
whether
that
it be
you look at
Fennec
it, but I
Shan.
don't look at it that way.
But that's what
But
happened,
then-
though.
but- yeah,
it doesn't.
that's exactly
It's
how it-
the perception is one thing. That's what Walter was talking about earlier when he was talking about how fans will ignore certain issues. We all see that characterization. was a failure. We all see how he wasn't a character with a lot of agency. Fennec Shand would advise him and he would listen to her every time. He wouldn't really override her in many situations. Other characters would say,
Fennec
"Oh, we
Shand.
won't betray
There's a
you."
reason for that.
Instance. But hold on. For instance, like he made this whole deal with all of the gangs in Tatooine and Mos Espa.
Oh my
For what?
God.
And Jose,
For what?
wasn't it funny that the beginning of the 7th episode, what they chose to take 5 minutes of exposition going over
Mhm.
the deal that he made, that at that point you knew
It was going to go
bad
wrong.
storytelling, it was going to go wrong.
And he didn't prepare
And-
for that at all.
And can I say one more thing, and I'll let
Again,
it
a
out to you?
failure.
Please, we do not need Robert Rodriguez attached to anything Star Wars.
Oh
I am
my
a fan of some of his things, but in Star Wars, his direction, the way he chooses to do things, does not work. I mean, I look at the first episode where there was that over the top moment of Boba Fett where they have the low shot looking up to him in sort of like this Superman, moment and whatnot, which was super cheesy, and I cringed when I saw that. And then you had another thing in the 7th episode, and this is another thing that I have to criticize.
Mm-hmm.
There were things in that episode that made absolutely no sense, and the kids can agree with that because we were watching it, and it happened to deal with Black Chrysanthemum, right? Where he
Mhm.
got shot the hell up,
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
thrown up against the wall, and the 2 Vespa riders came over to pick him up, and he's literally struggling to walk, and then all of a sudden they drop him. The one guy does a
Oh my
turn
God.
to
Yeah,
shoot,
completely
and Chrysanthemum
unnecessary.
blasts the guy,
Scab.
and then right after that, oh, I need help. It was things like that
What?
were infuriating about, especially Robert Rodriguez's direction of the show.
I mean,
Jose, I know you wanna jump in
just
because
the last
I think
point.
you and I agree
Hold
on
on,
Just the
this.
last point in
I got
regards to the
there's some
fighting.
points
In
that I
regards
have
to the
to-
fighting.
there's-
In regards to the fighting, let me just make this last point. Every fight that Boba won, if he won, was because the other character was a moron. Again, everything here was because of stupidity that made the plot go forward. Because Cad Bane lost because he pulled a Red Viper standing over the mountain. He's like, let me stand right over you.
So Cad Bane is an
and
idiot
boast.
then? He's
He
the
is.
worst bounty hunter in the world
AJ
then?
is
He
furious.
stood
about
right
that,
over
by the way.
him and boasted like the Red Viper.
It's not. It can't be. It can't be that Boba Fett just was able to outsmart him in that moment. It can't be that.
That wasn't dumb. Would you, if you were involved in some sort of conflict with someone and they had some weapons on them and you had a weapon, you had a gun, and you knew that it was a dangerous situation, you already know that in any conflict you're not supposed to be within 6 feet of somebody with a gun, right? Because they can charge at you quickly. But if they also have a
Okay.
weapon, would you stand over them, especially if they have a short range weapon that they can stab you with?
When
Would
you
stand
believe
over
that
them
you're
and
Cad
boast?
Bane and you've shot him down a couple times already, and you have him
This
point
is-
blank, yeah,
this is
that's
fandom
literally.
here.
You're gonna tell this is not. It's not fandom. You cannot tell me that as an assassin that this is not a common thing that we see, where they give them the last words and they have them point blank and they're about to shoot.
Well, it's
You
always
can't
a
say that
foolish
this is
thing to
something
do,
that-
though. It's always a foolish thing to do. It doesn't.
On someone that's fully armored, how are you gonna shoot him if he's laying down? You got to come up close and shoot him in the head. You're gonna tell me this is the first time
I
that's
do
ever
agree with
happened?
I mean, it was
Yeah.
all very foolish decisions, regardless. There was just a number of foolish decisions leading to each subsequent decision. Again,
AJ
just-
is pissed off at the fact that they brought in Cad Bane for
They didn't kill
2
him off either.
episodes and then
he
kill
might not
him
be
off.
dead. That's right.
They didn't kill him off.
True, but
First of
But
all, his species
still.
is known to have more than one heart, and second of all, as soon as they had the overshot on him, you hear a beeping sound, and my assumption is that
He's not
that's
dead.
something that has to do with keeping him alive
again, what's the point
Don't.
then? I mean,
for the expansion of Cad Bane in the
what's
future.
point? But you didn't have to do
No.
that.
So
You
what was
didn't
the
have
point
to
in
show
the
him.
now?
You could, yeah.
Okay,
That's
okay.
future.
You
to
could have
show
shown
Can-
Boba
can I-
Fett
wait,
as a
wait, wait.
badass.
He was-
To show Boba Fett as a badass.
Oh,
But-
God.
But so that's the
Bruh.
thing. All right. So here's the issue. The criticism is, oh, Boba Fett's not like he's been beat, he sucks, and this, that, and the third. Even though it's been written in that he wasn't at his full capacity, right? Can we agree with that?
He
Yes,
wasn't?
no.
Yeah, up until he got out of the back to tanking, fully got away from that. He was not at 100%. No.
But then once he did that, he
That
still
was 4 episodes
kinda
besides
insane.
the ones where
Yeah,
he was
they
missing,
still
where
kinda
he was at
insane.
full strength.
You know.
He was at full
He
capacity.
wasn't at full strength. That was the whole thing. He was doing you guys asked early on, like, why does he keep having to go to the back to tank? Because he hasn't fully recovered. And
Well,
they
he
made it a
stopped.
point in the show. Yeah, because
stopped.
they made it a point because they made it a point in the show to say that, like, your recovery is now complete. And that was that was where episode 4 ended.
So why was he still
And then we get
incompetent
5
after
and
that?
6.
He was still like
Exactly.
bad at fighting and
Oh,
incompetent
goodness.
after that.
He's
What
not
did he
bad at
mean?
fighting. You're gonna tell me that episode 7 he was bad at fighting, that everything that he did was bad, that he made that the decision to come out with Mando was not on him and his own to send out the to use the distraction of the major domo to then come out and make the plan of attack, that
That
he
I'm gonna
didn't.
give you
Yes.
credit. That was a good play. That was a good play.
That wasn't Boba Fett. Okay, he didn't look like a total badass doing everything that he did in those scenes also with Mando,
No.
both of them in tandem.
No.
Mando looked way
No,
more
absolutely
badass.
not.
No.
Mando looked way
Absolutely
more
not.
badass.
No way. You're
No.
crazy.
I wasn't a
bro.
fan of him shooting and then raising his knee at the same time to shoot. That
was a crane
kinda
kick.
Because he's taking
wonky.
on 2 people at the same time.
No,
It's the
I
same thing
know,
as
but
having it's the same thing as
it's
having
still,
2 revolvers and shooting in both directions. If I do
I
this,
totally agree.
where I pull out my revolvers and I shoot in 2 different directions, the same thing as me doing it with the knee in one direction, revolver in the
Right.
other.
But again, that falls on Robert Rodriguez and his direction, and again, I'm
God.
not a fan of what he does when it comes to this kind of stuff. He chooses to do these over the top things, which, you know what, really doesn't have a place in what we're trying to do. I'm gonna say this, I was enjoying the hell out of the show when you were dealing with Flash. If you gave me a show solely on the flashbacks, I'd be having a different conversation with you right now. What really
I
throws me
guess I
off
I don't
is the
see.
present time, because the present time, you could excise that from the entire show and I'll be fine.
I
Give me the
Yeah, I mean,
flashbacks
wanna-
and I'm
it's-
good.
I'd like to
I'm
ask
good with the flashbacks.
a question of everyone to kind of maybe sum up what I think another problem that I had with the show was. Were the Pikes good villains?
No,
No.
not at all.
No.
Hell no.
It's disappointing that they hyped up for the entire show this massive army that they were going to send over, and you get what, maybe 20 guys and 2 robots, and then at the very end of the show they were like, the Pike Syndicate, which is supposed to be a massive crime,
Controlling the
organization,
cities.
they're like, well, we'll leave Tatooine alone because it's too much
I
problems.
mean, Boba Fett took
I
him out
mean,
with 10 people,
really?
so
That
or less.
they totally screwed up the Pikes also. I hate to say it, because you know what, they build them up as this huge big bad, and at the end of the day, we got less than. We really did.
Yeah, but the thing is that, like, this isn't the Empire versus the Rebels. These are crime syndicates. Just
but
because you're a
exactly.
crime syndicate doesn't mean that you have hundreds of thousands of, Pikes. It's a crime syndicate. When
But
you
it's
see
a
crime wars, when
syndicate
you see
that
It's the Marvel
And
problem, though.
Gabe,
It's
Gabe,
bad
but
villains.
that's fine. That's fine.
yeah,
and
I
agree with
don't
that.
disagree that. I don't think that they were great villains at all. But
Right.
it's
I don't
crazy to
disagree
think
with
that,
your...
like, if there's a gang war, if there's a gangland war, that you're gonna think of it as an actual real war. Which, if
then don't
I
hype
don't
it
think
up as such.
Why were
Don't hype
why
it
were
up
the
as
Hutts
such.
so
I
afraid
don't
of
think
them?
that it was
Right? Like, what were the Hutts so afraid of? You don't like
maybe
why
those
pull
like super droidicas.
well, why pull the bait and switch when the Hutts could have just as easily had 2 droidicas and like done the whole fight at the end and they built them up for about a whole episode, the Hutts.
Mm-hmm.
So they wasted a whole episode
Mhm.
doing that to pull another bait and switch, by the way, because we thought that it was the bikers that killed the Tuskens, and it turns out that it was the Pikes. So, haha, bait and switch to bait and switch to bait and switch.
No,
For
because
what?
we knew that. We
But
knew
for
that.
what, though?
We knew that very early on.
But again, the Hutt
Fennec
twist
Shan-
for what?
But because Fennec Shan on the biker stuff, Fennec Shan very quickly, put a notion that, like, yeah, I doubt that it was a
Okay.
biker gang. So
But
that
what
was
about the
already
Hutts,
put out
though?
there.
Why a whole episode of building them up just to pull a bait and switch?
Again,
Isn't that
maybe
again
for
a
the
failure of
future.
storytelling?
Maybe you guys have always said that, like, Filoni loves doing these little things that pay off in the future. Okay, why can't these things be what he's doing also?
But I don't think...
Why is it
Nothing
okay in,
paid
like,
off in the
other
Filoni doesn't
present,
have a
but not
hand in
here?
this.
Nothing paid off in the
hold on.
present for us to be hopeful about the future.
let's talk about that, because Filoni was not as involved
Yeah,
in this show as he was with the
it's
others.
Favreau
This
mainly.
was really Favreau writing the entire show. I think there was one episode, and ironically, one of the best episodes, which was the one from The Desert Comes a Stranger. That is the only one that Filoni wrote. Everything else is Favreau. So, we have to make sure that we're putting the blame where blame should lie. This is not a Filoni product here. It's really not. This was more Favreau
I have
dealing with
a
it, and if that's the case, you can see the difference in quality when Filoni is not attached to the project. And so,
but I have
at first I was concerned. I said, you know what? Filoni is I in Filoni I trust, right? I've always said that. I've always said
mhm,
Filoni
mhm.
needs to have a bigger impact on the Star Wars universe in general. And when I started watching the show, I'm like, was I wrong with Filoni? But now I look at it, he really didn't have a lot of input on this.
See,
This was
but I
more
have
of a Favreau thing.
no, 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 no. Just because you're the writer doesn't mean that you have no input. The executive
I'm
producer,
right. I'm not saying that, and you're absolutely right. But the main thing is that this is really, it has Favreau's handprints all over it. It really
but it
doesn't have
does, but you can't
Filoni,
say
not
that
like the
Filoni
other
doesn't
not the
have.
other
You can't
shows.
say because as an executive producer, Filoni also approves everything that goes in.
He
He saw
approved
the
Bad
scripts. He
Batch too,
saw,
though.
huh?
He was a producer on Bad Batch. Let's not do this to Filoni.
Yeah.
We can't blame him for that mess.
Okay. So you're
Eh,
saying that that he's just a producer in name?
I mean, he
no,
does
but
have
I'm
some input,
saying
but he has to have
right.
other things that he has to do. He can't be involved in
Yeah, I
every
understand that, but
single
the executive
minute
producer
detail.
greenlights everything. He gets the script, he gets the shots, he gets to see
Okay,
all this stuff,
fine.
and then he has to say,
Filoni stinks then. Like for this and for Bad Batch, because it didn't make sense. It was like if you had the
Arguably,
Iron Man movie, the first Iron Man movie, the first Hulk movie, and then Nick Fury was in it for half the movie, setting up the Avengers. That's what we got, basically. It just didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense for like what character we wanted to see here.
like I
And
said,
yeah,
if you look at the episodes, episode 6 was directed by Filoni,
mhm.
was written by Filoni, and quite you can
was
make the case that that's one of the better episodes of the
was
series.
that the one with like
Yeah, but
basically
episode
everybody?
5 was also one of the
That's the one with Cad Bane in it.
With episode 6 was that one with like Luke Skywalker and everyone in it. Am I
yeah.
remembering that correctly?
No,
Mhm.
no, no, no,
Was
no.
that
That
episode
was
Yeah,
that
5?
that's
was
episode 6.
Well,
that
I
was
mean,
episode 5, and that was directed by
No,
Bryce
episode
Dallas
6 is
Howard.
the one. Episode 6 is the one that has Grogu
oh
training and
yeah,
all that
because
stuff.
remember it ends with
Mm,
Grogu with that
Yeah.
cliffhanger of him deciding whether or not he
Episode
wants to go back.
5, episode
Episode
5
5
is
is
Oh
the
the
one
one
yes,
where
with
yes,
the
yes.
Mando
You're
ship,
correct. You're
right?
correct. You're correct.
yeah.
And again, like I said, probably one of the better episodes of the series, right?
Mhm.
You
Episode
are
5
absolutely right.
was one of the best episodes because of all the stuff, all the Mandalorian Creed stuff and all that, right?
Right, but what I'm saying is
But
that you can
Filoni
see
didn't
that
write that one, right? You know what I'm saying?
no,
Like
he didn't.
what I'm trying to say is that like see for me, episode 5 has all Filoni like handprints all over it, in my opinion, with all the Mandalorian Creed stuff, with all the
Because
dark saber
Ahsoka's in
stuff.
it. Ahsoka's in it.
Not just because of what Ahsoka was in. No, Ahsoka was in
Oh
episode
no,
6. I'm
Ahsoka
talking
was
about
in episode
5.
6. Yeah,
I'm talking
I'm
about
getting
episode
messed up.
5, specifically episode 5, which I thought was an amazing Mandalorian episode from beginning to finish. You know, the ship, the Mandalorian Creed stuff, the dark saber challenge, Pre Vizsla, the whole like backstory, you know, all that stuff. I thought that was actually the strongest episode for me out of the entire series.
Yeah, yeah.
That one wasn't written by Filoni, but it has Filoni all over it. What I'm trying
But
to
it
say is
also
that
has original. It also has original characters that Filoni had created in the animated verse. Specifically, Cad Bane. Cad Bane. If you know Filoni, Filoni is very, very territorial with his characters, especially
right,
Ahsoka.
yeah, and I understand
And
that. I understand that. But
that makes sense. That yeah, yeah. Go
what
ahead.
I'm trying to say is that like that just because Filoni only directed or wrote one episode doesn't mean that he didn't have his paws all over it.
I
And
don't.
I'm using episode 5 as an example of it because episode 5 was also a great episode that I guarantee you had all of Dave Filoni's influence on it,
And
but he
I'm
didn't write
pretty
it or
sure
direct it.
I'm pretty sure that when he heard that we were going to be using Clone Wars and and Rebel stuff, he probably said, "Okay, I'm going to be more directly involved." And again, you notice that the 2 episodes that have elements of those shows are the
Mm-hmm.
best ones in the series.
Sure.
And I think again, it becomes a matter of, you know, what do you do with the character of Boba Fett? We know we want to bring him back. We know we want to tell his story
Mm-hmm.
about how he got out of the Sarlacc pit, but what do we do then? And I think that's where the narrative kind of went off. I know AJ's been dying to jump in here, so I'm gonna pass the mic over to AJ.
So, one conversation ago, we were talking about the Pikes.
Yeah. Feels like 15 minutes ago, right?
The Pikes, okay, first of all, they may not be the Empire, but their syndicate and their network spans entire planets.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way you can possibly convince me that they did not have the numbers to completely swarm Boba Fett. I'm sorry, you cannot convince me of that. If they control entire planets and trade routes. Sorry. Two.
Right, I understand
Yeah,
that.
two. Like, just I mean, I get that they were trying to make the Pikes the big villain of this season, but for them to go, haha, it wasn't actually the writers, it was actually the Pikes. That kind of felt, as much as I was like, okay, well, if you're gonna deepen the whole the Pikes are evil, that's fine. But like, really?
That was so cringe, bro.
They were already evil enough, I
Um,
feel like.
yeah, and like, and then, what's the point of that? Like, I get you don't want to spend more, but why go to Boba Fett and say, well, one or the other, man? Well, I
They
mean,
do have the ability to just cut one of them off and say, you know what, we're just not working with you anymore.
but then for
Tough.
them to say both, like, I mean, I get, again, they want to protect their margins, but like,
For that, there,
I
that's
guess
just
they
a
were trying to,
business decision, right?
yeah, I guess they were trying to like completely do away with Boba Fett. They're like, okay, what's a good way for us to A, not spend money, and B, not to deal with this pesky washed up bounty hunter anymore? Oh, okay, let's kill both, but blame one of them on the other guy. Okay, kind of smart move, but again, I would have much preferred it just stayed the
It's like
writers who
gangland
did it.
stuff.
Yeah, but
It
like,
seemed unnecessary. It did.
yeah, that's the other thing.
I
And
mean,
then,
to your
For a
point,
gangland
AJ.
story?
No, but to your point, AJ, what would have been a better way of doing it? He already had the 3 families, right, in his pocket, the Pike Syndicate, right? Why not assassinate him when they're having one of the meetings and just call it a day at that point? I mean, it does seem kind of senseless. AJ's got a point there. Why go through it? It kind of reminds me of, remember the Punisher,
yeah,
the one with Thomas Jane, where he went through all this thing to kind of frame John
Mm-hmm.
Travolta's character by
Mm-hmm.
putting fire hydrants so that he kills his wife. Just kill the dude. I mean, there's no
Maybe
valid
because his
reason.
legend precedes him and they don't want to take a battle directly to him.
He wasn't even a
Is that
thing at that point,
far-fetched?
though. He wasn't even a thing. He
Hmm?
was just some dude hanging out with the Tuscans at that point. Why would they even bother to mess with him? That doesn't make sense.
Here's-
I mean,
The only thing I know why they killed the Tuscans, because they were messing with their trade routes. But like, there's no reason that they had messed with Boba at that point, because he was kind of a nobody. They probably thought he was dead, and even if he wasn't dead, why would you fear the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy if he's just hanging out with some Tuscan raiders?
all right,
Like,
here's the other
I don't.
thing.
I
because
mean,
he
but
has a
that's not a
legend that
thing.
precedes him.
But that's not a problem, though. There's no problem there. I just still think
Mhm.
that the thing is, again, the plot twist didn't make sense. And another thing about the Pikes that I had an issue with is even the villainous stuff that they didn't really make sense. Like, why did they kill Jennifer Beals? Why did they blow up that bar? What did she do? She didn't do anything. She didn't put herself in
Well,
league with Boba
okay,
Fett. She had never sworn any particular allegiance to him. She had just
well,
basically like made him comfortable there. and play
She
play
actually
both sides
kind
of
of
things.
She did
She
kind
actually
of,
kind of did make have an allegiance with Boba
yeah,
Fett because he's like,
yeah.
yeah, you're under us now, and she's like, okay, I guess that's just how it's gonna be. And then the Pikes, when they I guess found out about it, they're like, what's a good way to hurt Boba Fett and make him look weak? Weak. I know. Let's bomb his club.
Okay.
Here's the other thing I wanted to talk about with the Pikes. I think they were too big of a villain for this show, and not even a one very well handled. I would have much preferred, and this is going to jump on to something else that I really didn't like about the show. You really just should have had it be a showdown with Cad Bane.
No.
That's very true.
No.
I
The
thought so too.
entire
No.
season.
No.
Yeah, that's really what it should have been.
No.
Yeah.
I think it should have been that too.
Like I know
I agree with you
Eli,
on that.
I know Eli, you don't want it to be a plug fest of former characters, but if you're talking about a better story overall, the Pikes are too big.
And you're
yeah,
leaning.
but who would hire him?
No,
He
but
doesn't need.
You lean
He
into
doesn't
the
need-
whole
Jabba the Hutt.
master
Jabba the
teacher, master
Jabba the
teacher.
Hutt.
Or
thing.
have Black
I mean, that's not
Chrysanthemum
much.
be more of a villain instead of just
Okay, hold
immediately
on,
becoming
hold
an
on.
ally.
So like,
Yeah.
here, it should have been this. Boba's moving in to Jabba's area. The Hutt see this and are like, they're on their planet. They're like, okay, well, we kind of want to take it though. They show up, you have that whole sequence. Fine. They show up with Black Chrysanthemum, try to make a showing of it. Black Chrysanthemum obviously fails. Who do they go to next? Cad Bane. That is the rest of the season. That is how you handle that.
You know what I
Yeah,
feel
I agree
like
with that.
would have been
I would have been good with that.
great, and you could have made all of that we saw with the Daimyos season 2, all this Daimyo stuff. They could have made the whole season about the Tuskens for a few episodes. Maybe just extend not even that much more. Like I said, all I wanted was maybe half an episode more to wrap that up, and then you could have killed them. That would have been fine. It would have been more.
I
It would have been
think
more.
you even needed to kill
You
them.
didn't. You didn't have to, but like I feel like the bigger sin was to kill them off screen like that. I feel like that's a big sin when they're these characters that you're trying to humanize. You're trying to create a connection with them at the main character, and then they just die off screen. You know what I mean? I know Star Wars is famous for this also. I get that. But again, that's Star Wars kind of just looping and doing the things again and over and over and over and over and over again that don't necessarily work. But what would have been fun.
And
Let me just finish this real quick. What would have been more fun is to kind of jump off of what you're all saying, where you have Cad Bane in it. I thought Black Chrysanthemum could have been another big character in this. Have them stick to their bounty hunter origins from the Darth Vader comics. Have the entire season, again, be about the conflict between Cad Bane, Black Chrysanthemum. Maybe Boba Fett doesn't break away from his programming immediately. He goes to the Tuskens, he finds some humanity, but then he goes back and works with the Hutts because it's all he knows. And then by the end of the season, you get him to a point where he says, I'm tired of working for all of these idiots who are just going to get me killed. And then you have season 2. Then you have this. Then you have season 2. You focus season 2 entirely on him being a daimyo. You make a couple of small changes because that's the thing. If there were a few situations where he just made a different choice or said something instead of just letting somebody else make the choice for him, there were a lot of instances where this would have been from something like a little less than to something truly great. And it's not about splitting the difference between hating it and loving it as a Star Wars fan. It's about loving what it could have been and seeing those small choices that ruined what it was starting off as. But like that, I think that would have been a better way to have a season 1 and a season 2, and then season 3 could have been what Tamara Morrison wanted. He could have been hunting down what's his name?
Mace Windu.
Mace Windu. Thank you.
Yeah, Mace Windu. But that's the thing.
but
I
Eli,
don't think that like it's ruined.
But
I think that
No
like,
show is ruined, but
It's just very disappointing.
that's the
really
kind
is.
of
I think
language
where
that's
it
out
is.
there. It's like all you see is
It's
that
not
like
from us. It's not from us. I'm not hating
disappointing
on it.
is not the same as completely like nobody here said we wouldn't watch a season 2. We're all gonna do it. I mean, besides the fact that we have to do it for the podcast, we're all going to watch season 2 because we want to see
But then
better.
you just said that it's ruined.
I didn't say it was ruined.
Like,
No, I didn't say it was ruined. I didn't say that.
Um,
You don't hear me sometimes. I didn't say it was ruined. I didn't
what
say
did
it was
you say
ruined.
then?
I said that a lot of the choices that they made the show a failure in this season. I didn't say the whole series was a failure.
You literally said the word ruined, so then I
Okay,
don't know.
fine. I said the word
like,
ruined, but like you're misconstruing what I'm trying to say. You're really misconstruing what I'm trying to say.
I
I'm
can
saying
only
this season
interpret
was
what you say.
okay,
You
man. Come on,
say-
hold on. I'm saying that this season failed overall because of small choices.
I don't-
I'm saying the
that's
choices. That's what I
insane.
said. That's what I said. I said the
Okay.
choices
I also-
ruined the
okay.
season. The choices are what were ruinous. So in the end, I'm not saying the whole series is ruined, but it could have been a much better
You
start.
call it a failure.
Are you going to harp on that, man? You're going to keep harping on that? I'm telling you, I'm clarifying. I'm clarifying.
All right,
What I already
guys,
clarified.
listen,
I already
hold on,
clarified.
Jose.
I already
Eli
clarified.
wants to jump in.
already
I think
clarified.
Eli
But hold
wants to
on,
jump
I'm
in.
sorry. I got it because the thing is, you can't call something a failure or ruined and stuff like that, and then say that like, oh well, that's not what I meant. You know, like you.
I
can't.
clarified
You
what I meant.
have
Can we
your
move on?
fault.
I clarified what I meant.
Let's chill here.
I clarified what I
I
meant.
can't give my point.
But I'm trying to come closer to you and agree
Never
with
mind,
you
it's
that the
cool.
show's
No,
not
that's
ruined.
fine.
I'm just trying to say the show's not
hold
ruined.
on.
I said I chose the wrong word. I chose the wrong word. But I'm saying the show's not ruined, but those choices were a mistake.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to use my moment to say that this is something that happens in Star Wars all the time, especially on social media. Can you please, okay, let me finish my point, please, okay? And I know you're shaking your head. Nobody can see this, but let me just please finish my point. All right.
Go for it.
This
Gabe.
is something that happens that like we have like some commentary. Maybe sometimes, we say something, oh, it's not what I meant, this, that, and the other, but it's already been said. And so and especially in social media and stuff like that, we see this so much in Star Wars that just that when you use commentary like this, it automatically just creates this divide that does make it feel like it's either a hate or love, you know?
I will say this though, and I'm going to throw it to Eli. I it's kind of hard to kind of see what is being put out in social media and kind of apply that to the context of this conversation, because social media tends to be way over the top, and you have the trolls and things like that that kind of reside in that space, and instantly if it doesn't mesh with their worldview, it's garbage, it's trash and stuff like that. And I don't think we're necessarily bringing that vibe to this podcast, per se. I think I understand where Jose is coming from, where he's like, you know what, there are elements of the show that are unforgivable, right? It doesn't mean that the show can't be redeemed, and I think that's where he's trying. Now, maybe he didn't choose the right words at the time, because you know what,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing this on the fly and stuff, right? So but I kind of get where he's coming from, and I know where you're coming from, because you hear these words and you're seeing all this stuff on social media, and so those two kind of connect. They'd be like, well, ruinous, failure, garbage, trash. Instantly, you make that connection because of social media, that we're trying to say the same things, and I don't think we are. I think maybe, and Jose, maybe you can agree with me on this, I think maybe the better word is that we were so hyped for this show, right? We were looking forward to the show,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and again, to use my word, it's disappointing that we didn't get
I
that,
agree with that.
because of all of these choices that were made. That, again, speaking to what Jose says, if you just flip them on a dime real quick, maybe we're not having these kind of reactions to it. You know what I mean?
And
On that note,
I totally agree.
okay.
Now send it over to our resident.
Yeah, he's now going to give us our social media
Finally.
commentary.
No. Wait, no.
He's definitely going to go there. So it was about
So,
that stuff.
I was talking about how Cad Bane would have made it a better season.
Okay. Look. Hold on. See, first off, I want to make this clear. I do not hate the show. It's not good, but that doesn't mean I hate it. It's just like disappointing. That's
Okay.
that's my first thing. Second off, I know you guys were saying, okay, first off, just don't make Boba Fett a daimyo. That whole thing just did not ruin the show, but was a very bad idea because Boba Fett did not fit that role at all. Cad Bane. Here's my thing, and I'm gonna go on a tangent with this, right?
Okay.
Cad Bane,
Put on your
just like
seatbelts, folks.
just like every other character, is reaching or has reached his expiration date. He's been in the show in multiple shows way too many times. We've seen him in Clone Wars, which obviously makes sense. We've had a return of Cad Bane and Bad Batch. We're getting him in Boba Fett, and frankly, it's really not surprising if he would be in Mandalorian.
He's 72 years old as of that show, right?
Yes. So what I'm trying to say here is, and I brought this up on a different podcast. We have a whole entire universe here. It's not just consisted of Cad Bane, for what's his name, the lizard dude,
Bosk.
Bosk, Fennec Shan, and Boba Fett as bounty hunters, because that's really the only bounty hunters
Well-
we've really seen in the Star Wars universe,
Well, we did
except for
have
like
the
a
one-
few.
I have a
Phantom
rebuttal
Menace
to that,
also.
Eli. By the way, I do have something to say when I have a moment.
Okay, but hold up. Now, here's the thing. I know you've especially said this before. They are the famous ones, so of course they would get the jobs. But what about the less famous ones, the ones that's trying to make a name for themselves? That's why I'm saying Cad Bane may not be the right choice, because if you had Cad Bane, you're not given enough time to expand the universe. We have more people um in the universe. And next thing, real quick, and I'm gonna make it quick. The Pike Syndicate, you said that it's a crime syndicate. A crime syndicate who has like large city, who like takes over large cities, generally consists of more than 2,000 gang members. That's why I'm saying maybe 20 gang members wasn't the right
It was
choice.
definitely more than 20.
It
It was
was
definitely
21.
maybe 21.
Yeah.
It was
21.
not 21. And besides, even if you have 2,000 gang members, you have them spread across the entire galaxy. Like, I think they went with the route of
They
like, all
seem
right,
to
can we put them down with a full scale war, or can we put them down with like
But
doing some
we're
sort of
also-
networking with the bosses there? And I think
We're
they
also
chose
talking
that.
about
They always jumped to the word war.
But hold on.
And again,
We are at war.
We're also talking about intergalactically, so you would figure that they would have more than just 2,000.
yeah.
So if you're
Mm-hmm.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, if you're spreading out, like, maybe let's just say, considering it's intergalactically, maybe like somewhere upwards of 100,000, because there's a lot of people in the galaxy.
And it's a big
Yeah.
galaxy.
It's a big galaxy, maybe even more than that. If you spread that out, it's still gonna be a lot. No matter what you say, it's definitely more than 21.
Yeah,
That's
I
all
mean,
I'm saying is.
It's just maybe it wasn't their style. Maybe they looked at it as an opportunity. Hey, we can either do this with all out war, or we can do this in another fashion of another kind of gangland wars. Like, let's use the bosses there and make deals, whatever, what have you. Anyway, I do want to bring something up though, Eli.
Okay.
I know that you say that, like, all right, we've seen a ton of Cad Bane and this, that, and the other, but we haven't seen Cad Bane live action at all. And I think that it's a completely different audience and world.
But it's
And that's
it's
kind of what
still-
they're fulfilling. Like, I still want to see Bosk, and I still want to see, some of these characters brought to live action, because it's very different from the animated and comic book space and novels and stuff. Just because we have a lot of material in other places doesn't mean that we shouldn't still see them in
No,
live
look,
action. No,
I don't disagree with that. It's just that we're getting too much of the same character. That's all I'm saying. So honestly, to me, it doesn't matter if it's live action or not, because we're still getting Cad Bane, when there are plenty of other bounty hunters that might be cooler than him that we
I don't know
get
about
time
that.
to see. Huh? Nah, bro. All I'm saying is, like, there's a lot more bounty hunters out there.
Let's lean into the final episode, because I think the final episode in of itself needs at least a discussion on. And I want to start out, and I'm gonna throw this to you, Gabe. I want to start out with one line that really, really stood out for me in that final episode, and that
Mhm.
was the realization that it was a conversation between Boba Fett and the Mandalorian. right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the realization that Cobb Vanth was dead and that Freetown wasn't going to come and, quote unquote, save them, even though they came in
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
one artillery vehicle, which was destroyed within the first 2 minutes. But anyway, that's besides the point. Um, one of the interactions that really struck out to me when they were having that conversation was when Boba Fett goes to the Mandalorian and says, "Well, I guess you're leaving." And the
Right.
Mandalorian was like, "Nope, I'm not." And Boba Fett, surprisingly, a guy who for the last 7 episodes was talking about honor, said, "Well, that's what I would do." I found that to be really, really out of character, and
Mm,
B, kind of like, what are we doing with Boba Fett? Because
well,
and then the Mandalorian goes, "Well, this is the way," and it makes sense for his character, but we've spent the last 6.5 episodes jumping into the fact that
mm-hmm,
Boba Fett is honorable. Boba Fett
mm-hmm,
is going
right.
to do things differently, and then the first instance that something goes wrong, he's like, "Sorry guys, I got to bounce."
No, I think you're
I
misinterpreting
found
that
that
though.
totally.
He
I
was about
that
to.
was like, wow.
No, he
I
wasn't
can't
about
believe
to.
that they did that. You know,
He
Mando
wasn't
but
convinced
about
he
him
to.
not
said
to.
that's what I would have done,
No, no, no,
and
no,
he
no.
said it.
It's
He said it very, very matter of factly. Like, you know what? If I were in your shoes, I'd bounce.
yes, but he's not. He's saying if I were you, someone that didn't have like that attachment to the people that he has right now,
But
then
it's
I
about
would have
honor,
bounced. If
isn't
he
it?
was, huh? No, because the thing
It's
is that
about honor.
then he would have also done it when he would have gone to slave. Because Mando said, "I'll go get your ship and then we can bounce." And Boba Fett said, "No, I'm staying." He's just saying what I would have done if I was a bounty hunter Mandalorian that has no attachment. He's not saying that that's what I would do as Boba Fett
But Mando does have an attachment. He has an attachment to Boba Fett.
to his creed.
He
Yes, but that's also why
and
Boba
so
Fett asked. That's why Boba Fett asked, like, you believe in that stuff,
right. But again, we're leaning in the whole honor
right?
storyline, right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem very honorable to me. If you go and you tell the guy, if I were in your shoes, I'd bounce, and you know what, screw
Yeah,
you, I'd leave you in this shamble.
right.
Again,
Because he, but
I think
I don't
they
think that that
did
has
not
anything to
know
do
how to
with like
handle.
I
No,
don't think
I'm
that that has anything to do with like Boba's state of mind, who he is now, this, that, and the other. You could have been, you could have been like a former person and be like, man, if I was that former person, if I was that person back in the day,
yeah,
I
but
would have gone if I were you.
you're reading into that way too much. I mean,
Not at all,
I'm
because
looking
that's
at
I think
that
that
at
that's what he's
face
doing.
value.
He's not saying because if he wanted to, then he could have bounced. He could have said like, you know what, yeah, you're right. Go get the ship. We're gonna go. He didn't because he's not that person anymore. That was in the same scene, in the exact same
I
scene.
just that was a telling comment for me, and it just kind of leaned into the whole thing that I have, where it's like you don't know what to do with Boba Fett. You
See, but
really don't.
that's what I'm saying though. Like the
That's
scene
how I
itself
looked at
tells
that.
you though. The scene itself tells you because if he really if that really is who he what he would have done if he was Mando or what his intention was in that moment, the moment that Mando had suggested like, hey, I can get your ship and then we can bounce, then he would have taken that opportunity. He was just saying like, yo, you can go. You don't have any attachment. If I was you, someone that had no attachment, that doesn't want to defend the people here and this and the other, yeah, I would go too. He's just being
What,
honest and real about that situation. But
and,
he's
and
not.
let me ask one more question, and then I'm going to throw it to everybody. And I think we need to talk about
Mhm.
the Rancor because AJ is dying to talk about the Rancor. But
Oh my god.
um,
I can't wait to talk about the Rancor.
it oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. With respect to, you know what, forget it. It'll come
All
back
right.
to me later.
Okay.
Let's go ham on the Rancor.
Wait,
Yes.
I do want to
So
talk. I do before we get to the Rancor, just because we're on that scene with Mando and stuff like that. One thing that I find as a
Oh,
that's
now I remember. But
okay.
finish your thought, and then
But what I
I'll
was
get
gonna
back
say,
into
one
it.
thing that I thought was notable is that Boba Fett is still a man like searching for a tribe. That's what he, I think, feels or sees that he could have there on Tatooine and stuff. And in that moment where he's asking Mando Din Djarin, like if he believes in that Mandalorian crap, and Mando replies, "This is the way," or he does. I don't remember the exact sequence,
Yeah, no, yeah,
and
that's
Boba Fett says good. I think that might be like a hint to possibly potentially something that like Boba might see himself like, all right, let me try this Mandalorian stuff. Because at the end of the episode, he says like, we're not suited for this. So then what's there left for the future of Boba Fett? Like we know that we're still gonna have him, in the future, either at least in the Mandalorian season 3 and possibly a second season of Boba Fett. If he agrees or doesn't see himself as a daimyo and wants to leave the city to Cobb Vanth, which is pretty much exactly what's going to happen based on the end credit scene,
mhm.
then Boba Fett is still searching for a tribe, and I think that that's the story of Boba Fett, that he's still searching for a place to call family or his people or his path, his way, whatever it is.
So you may
Do
have
you
just
feel like
answered.
It's kind of like the
You
end of
may,
WandaVision, where
yeah,
she got
but I
free
think
pass for like all those people were like, oh well, yeah, I guess you can leave now and it's no big deal, and like for mind controlling us for months. He just, like I said, he's just a guy looking for a tribe. He got his first tribe killed, the Tuscans. He got a bunch of people killed in this tribe. So we're
he
just gonna
didn't get them
excuse the
killed?
fact he did get them killed. He got them involved.
well,
How did he get them
I
killed?
think you guys may have answered the question that I was about to ask, because one of the things that, and especially in that last episode, he kept on referencing, well, the people want me, the people need me. What
Did they?
I never got that
Yeah,
My
connection
I
city.
for
gotta
the
say,
entire
Well, this is
series,
my city stuff. Like,
but
was it?
again, yeah, but again, I think what you guys just may have answered it, because he's looking for a tribe. But to me, I never in any of the episodes got the sense
Yeah.
that everybody was all about Boba Fett over there in Mos
Yeah, no,
Espa.
I think that was a poorly. I think that because I think that connection was, I guess, implied through the
Vespa
I'm
Riders.
just gonna keep calling them the Vespa Rangers, because they, I guess, they represented the people on the ground, on the streets.
I think they were called the
when Boa
mods.
first,
I think it just
they're
came. They
they're
were
called
the
the mods.
mods,
I just
right?
don't agree with
Yeah,
that name.
yeah.
I like I
I'm
like
sorry. I thought
Vespa
we just
Rangers better.
didn't
The
know.
Vespa Rangers
It,
are
it
yeah,
came to me. Vespa
yeah.
Rangers.
Yeah.
So I
Oh
think that
God,
was what that was the purpose
disgusting.
of the mods, the Vesper Rangers. The purpose is for them to be representing the town folk, the people. When Boba went to them, when they first interacted with them, he's like trying to make some sort of negotiation. They're like, we're starving, we need help, we need protection, we need this, that, and the other. And Boba's like, all right, I'm gonna take care of you guys. I just think that they did a very terrible job in
Yeah,
choosing
I
who
agree.
represents the town
Okay,
when
all
these
right.
people don't actually look anything like the people from Tatooine. That's the biggest issue
I
that I
thought
have with them.
I thought
There's only like wait,
the
wait,
Freetown people were
wait.
much more interesting than the people in the
Yeah, I
actual
thought so
town.
too.
They
Yeah.
I
they
thought so
should have
too.
featured them a lot more. I liked
This
how they came in at
and
the end, and that
yeah,
one character, like the main Freetown person, I thought was cool, and how he like
Joe. His name
connected
is
the
Joe. Yeah,
the bartender. Yeah,
bartender Joe.
His name is
bartender
So
Joe.
Joe.
yeah, his name is J
Are you
O, I
for real?
believe.
Oh my
Yeah, I think so.
god.
Anyway, so this, I wanted to bring this up
Wow.
earlier though. This is actually, so the whole, when I wanted to like talk about Boba's like agency and this, that, and the third, like when they were when the tavern got blown up, and he's like, oh, we should go hold up in the palace. The mods making that statement that like we're staying wasn't them telling Boba what to do. It was them saying like, "Hey, we need to defend the people of the town." And again, since they represent the town technically in this storyline, Boba decides like, you know what? I want to stand with the people of the town. That's the way that I perceive that
Still would have been
part.
smarter to go back to the fortress though, because they only wanted
Smarter,
to attack
yes, but
Boba, so they would have
symbolic. It's a
they would have
symbolic
damaged
thing.
Boba's palace
But I'm
Yeah, but
whatever, the
it's a
hut palace.
symbolic thing. It's more of a.
Right.
It's
but
not
I'm
a. It's
gonna
not an intelligence thing. It's a symbolic thing that like I'm gonna stand with you people,
Yeah, and
so
I
you
can
can
go
but
with
earn
I'm
their
gonna
that.
respect.
I can sort of go with that, but I think that it was too forced here. I think it was too
yeah, but
forced
I'm
in that
gonna I'm
moment.
gonna say this. You're
I like
saying that
symbolic though.
they didn't force him. They
Yeah,
they
the
weren't telling
symbolism
him,
is
but
good.
quite honestly, if they don't go, who's left? There was no choice for him to make. If they were staying, he was forced to stay with them, because what? He's going to take on the Pikes with Mando and Fennec. and that's it.
Probably would have been easier to do it
Well, I
inside
mean,
a fortified
he
palace.
holds up. He holds. Yeah, it's
No,
a
I
fortified
know that,
palace.
but you're saying that there was no choice. That there was a choice. There was no choice.
There was a choice.
If you say
I-
they're gonna stay,
Should I say
you
something?
lose your quote unquote army, especially since Freetown's not showing
Can I
up.
ask the ultimate question?
So
Can I ask one question that really, like,
Rancor.
if you have a spaceship that can hover, why would you not bring that out during the battle? It
Because
wasn't
the
like it was in the
Rancor is
shop.
cool. That's why.
Yeah.
yeah, let's get into the Rancor before
No.
we wrap things up, because I think the
No.
Rancor is
He had,
Yes.
like
he had a
the-
freaking
No.
attack helicopter.
the elephant
No.
in the
He had
room.
an attack helicopter,
No.
and he didn't do
The
anything
Rancor
with it.
was cool as
Yeah.
hell.
So like,
No.
okay,
It's cool when
No.
the droid shooting at you can't hit something that's like 50 feet tall and moving like 2
And
miles
that's
an
been
hour.
happening in Star Wars since Episode 4.
Listen, the
Yeah,
droidicas couldn't hit an entire mob of people running.
It doesn't matter.
Right
we
in
can't
front of
like we've
all
been.
you
it-
had to
weren't-
do
they weren't
was
running,
get
they
a
were-
right shot
they-
in the
they were
middle,
hiding
and it
in
would
one
blow
place.
up
I agree.
everybody.
I agree.
You
That's
know what I'm
absolutely
saying?
true. But
Oh my
that
God.
sucks. That's
But the Rancor
terrible.
was
But
cool.
you know what? It's been happening since the inception of Star Wars.
Come on,
And we've
we
all
gotta
accepted
talk-
it.
Wait,
We've all
gotta-
accepted
the
it.
Rancor was cool, but I actually think I know what AJ
No.
is gonna say first
We've
and foremost.
got to talk
I wanna
about
hear
the
it.
Keiju
I wanna
fight.
hear it.
Let's go, Keiju fight, man.
No.
I think I know one of the things that
AJ,
Nothing.
AJ, come on, let's go.
Keiju,
okay. So
Keiju.
like, first off, even before that, to Jose's point, bringing out the fire spray probably would have been a good idea, but then that like completely skyrockets collateral to like 1 billion.
That's
That's
He
true.
the only
already
thing.
destroyed the town anyway.
I mean,
Yeah,
the town's in shambles at this point. Who
so does a
cares?
Rancor.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, but
Also, why did
Well,
they
that's
start
true.
shooting at the Rancor after it saved them? And where was Danny
Yeah,
Trejo?
like-
because the Rancor got crazy. Very much
All right.
like
Why not wait
Godzilla.
for Boba, man? Like if somebody's dog is going crazy, I'm not going to start shooting at it. I'm going to wait for the owner to
Oh.
show up.
Somebody's
Yeah.
dog
Actually,
goes crazy.
I want
Dropping
AJ to. I
buildings,
really want
you
AJ
know?
to talk about this. But if you guys remember in the chat, I sent you guys like the eye roll emoji. It was over here at this part.
When they shot at the
Anyway,
Rancor?
go on.
okay.
It'll be
So-
like at the end. But yeah, go on, AJ.
The other thing, I want to bring a very important piece of evidence to the table. And I say evidence because there are dedicated frames to this in
Okay.
Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi.
Oh my god, he's so angry.
How does Luke kill the Rancor? Hey, you know what's a good idea? Let's get its own door to drop down on its neck or its back or
Mhm.
whatever. And that'll
Yeah.
kill it. And guess
Mhm.
what? It kills it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just regular steel. Now,
But-
in this episode, this Rancor, God or the Father, the whatever they worship in Star Wars, bless this thing,
Mm-hmm.
is up against freaking Uber Droidicas,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm gonna say now was also way too over the top for the Pikes to be using. Like just using these things against Boba and his dudes, that was overkill. That's like sending a Star Destroyer.
That sounds very
after
Pike-ish.
freaking- But okay,
It's like using a
Pike-ish or
tank to
not-
fight a gang war. Like, damn. I'm glad they don't
You
do
guys
that
said
here.
that the Syndicate's this all-powerful, mighty gang. So, but anyway,
Alright,
yeah,
alright,
go
but-
on with
Two
the Rancor.
robots.
I have a rebuttal for this. It's a really important thing that I think you're missing, AJ. But yeah, go on.
Again, I get this is the Pikes, but I'm just saying from like
Kaiju
like-
stand.
No, not even that. Just like I just don't think they should have used the Uber Droidicas, first of all. But that's a diversion. Back to this Rancor, blessed by the gods. Because God bless it. Okay, the Uber Droidica scratches it, fine. You see a little bit of a cut.
Mm-hmm.
This thing gets hit with blasters that blow up a tank speeder,
Mm-hmm.
and it just shrugs it off.
Point
Yes.
blank, no less.
Point
Yes.
blank.
Yes. There's a
And
reason
then
for
what's
this.
more? Then what's more? This is what I really cannot reconcile about this episode. Cad Bane walks right up to it, sprays a little flame like it's the freaking spray bottle, and the Rancor just goes, "Okay, I can tank hits from a tank speeder, but a little bit of fire spray? Nope.
All right.
I'm out. See you
All
later."
right.
By the way,
Here's
those droids are called Scorpionex Annihilators.
yeah,
Oh,
Scorpion Annihilator.
no,
So, just
no,
so you know.
All right.
no,
All right,
they
listen.
did
All
not.
right, on the Rancor, the reason it was so badass is because again, it was bred to be a champion. It was selected
No.
specifically.
That is
Steroids.
wrong.
bred to be-
That's actually wrong.
Steroids.
No, that's not wrong. Danny Trejo said it himself.
That's so.
He has
Yeah,
a
but-
line
but
in his
training-
episode where he says that, like, oh, I selected this one specifically myself to train as a champion.
Did this
Yeah,
did
but
this
training as a
did this
champion
Rancor train
doesn't
with
mean
King
that-
Kai?
No, but like I said, training as a champion doesn't all of a sudden replace his skin and make it
Yeah,
armor.
I'm saying it had like
No.
Dragon Ball powers.
That's the whole.
Well,
it had like chi and
as a
stuff.
breeder, so think of Danny Trejo as like a unfortunately as a dog fighting breeder. He's going to select the one that's bred to be huge, a tank, way more stronger, way more vicious than the other Rancors, than the other pit bulls.
That was a lot.
That's the way that I look at. If he's a
That
breeder and
is
he's a trainer,
such
And
a
ag-
stretch.
And again,
No,
I agree
I'm
with
It's not a
strong
stretch.
in the
That is
viciousness,
such a
but not the.
That
not
was a
the
little bit
armor
too much.
aspect of the
that
skin.
is not a stretch at
Right,
all.
wait.
If he specifically chose it to be a champion, he chose it for a reason because he knows either where how what champion pedigree it has, what size it's gonna be, and this and the third. The thing that we have in comparison between this Rancor and Jabba's Rancor is that Jabba's Rancor was anemic compared to this one in size and everything. And the second thing is that the Rancor, we have because it wasn't really expanded, but a perceived connection between Boba and this Rancor, based on the imprint that they have, which I can't say that Jabba's Rancor had. Maybe they imprinted, but it might have been imprinted with Jabba doesn't mean that he has a strong connection with him if he doesn't treat the Rancor like a child. That's
So the power
here's the
of
problem.
friendship gives it thicker skin.
May I ask a question in a
Yeah.
slightly ridiculous
ahead.
way to
Mhm.
clarify how this doesn't make sense? You're a world class martial artist. You're an MMA
Mhm.
fighter. You have your own school.
Mhm.
I am not. I'm just some
Mhm.
dude on the street. So if we compare the way that the Rancor in Return of the Jedi died to the way that the Rancor in this
Mhm.
show lived, I can't
Mhm.
take a sword to the top of my head like the Rancor did in Return of the Jedi. That one was not a world-class fighter. But you can't take ray blasts to the chest and survive because you are a world-class fighter. There's
Well,
there's no durability differences like that. You're more durable than me, I'm sure, but not that
That's
much
true,
more
but
durable.
there's two very different things, though. There's two very different things. First of all, we're not kaiju monsters. We have certain anatomy things about us. Okay, and second off,
I need to
even
see
though
Rancor's
we have that
anatomy
comparison,
immediately.
even though we have that comparison, for example, me versus someone that has a body that's way more durable, let's say heavyweight champion of the world John Jones versus myself, we both may have the same experience level as far as training martial arts.
Yeah, you could.
Oh, I thought
You
you
could
were
take
saying
way more of a beating.
He's still going to take way more than I can.
Okay,
But it's not just a
that's
skill thing.
There's like
punches.
really.
I'm
I
talking
understand
about
that. So when we
things
so
that
if we
level.
shred
extrapolate this to
planets.
Rancors, we can assume that there is a perceived understanding of like, all right, well, a much better bred Rancor with tougher skin is going to deal with more. Now, the fire spray thing, there's another aspect that we forgot about this. It's still a baby. Okay? It's still a baby, and I think the fire just scared it because it's still a child. It's still
That
a baby. It's
makes
not.
it
Yeah, absolutely,
so
100%.
much worse. So you're
No,
telling
how?
me that
It's not afraid
a
of giant
fully
robots.
grown Rancor in Return of the Jedi can
That honestly
just
makes a
the
little
fact
bit more
that
sense.
It's not afraid of the droids, but the fire
There's
scares
a
it.
third thing that I want to talk about with
little
that.
weird.
The other thing is I think that when Boba is riding the Rancor, there's like an actual like connection between them. And in that moment, like,
doesn't make
you
it
know,
more
hold on.
durable. Okay, I'm
It's
sorry.
not
I'm
a
sorry.
durability thing. They have durability, all right. Can we not agree that like the two Rancors are not the same?
No, they're
We
not
can't.
that different from each other. I
They
can't agree with
absolutely
that.
are. One is a
No,
champion.
they're
One
not.
was like not a champion. Okay,
But
I'm
who did
Yeah.
that
disagree
Rancor
to
fight?
disagree
I
on
need to
that.
go
Look,
back through this
huh?
footage because I do not remember that line. I really
You know
don't.
what though?
No,
I have
it
to agree with
100% is
Gabe.
because
I
you
would
weren't
have
paying attention to the show. That's why.
I would have loved to have seen. No, he Wolfie's right, but I would have loved to have seen maybe like a couple of scenes of him bonding with the Rancor and
I
training the
know
Rancor
that
after
I
that
blame
birth.
on Dave
No,
Filoni and
Yeah,
John
the
Favreau because
training.
obviously during the two
no.
episodes that we were watching Grogu get trained, Boba was training the Rancor.
Yeah, we should have.
That's where the
We
two
should have watched
episodes are.
that. Imagine watching a
That's
Rancor
Yeah, no.
train to fight giants. What are they,
Yeah,
Scorpinex
I think that would have been
Annihilators?
amazing. That would
No.
have
That'd be
been so
awesome.
sick. I think that would have been
No.
better. I think there was also another thing, like one of
These
my
are the
favorite scenes.
disappointments
Actually,
that
my favorite scene in the entire seventh episode was when Boba Fett, like, and the Rancor, they take one of the pikes, and the pike lifts him up to get shot by Boba, and then he throws him away. That was my favorite scene of the entire episode.
You got the Wilhelm scream there also.
Yeah, so
I mean, it was cool when it
you
ripped
know,
the droid apart.
yeah, but I think that there might be something there that I hope they do expand on, where where the Rancor being imprinted on Boba has like this like actual connection where the Rancor does what Boba kind of feels it wants it to do. I hope that that's something
Okay.
that actually happens.
Speaking about
Really?
imprints,
Yeah. So really quick, these are going to be my closing thoughts for this. Sorry, they're really you really just cannot convince me that there is such a big difference in terms of like durability between these two Rancors. I'm sorry, you cannot convince me of that. First of all, that completely breaks Rancor lore for me. First of all,
We're gonna have to
second of all,
research then.
second of all,
Anatomy. Rancor anatomy. Sorry, go ahead.
Boba Fett actually got played.
ooh, interesting. Okay, I didn't get this take from you.
Oh dang!
Right,
We're
not-
just
not-
about to
not-
close.
Not
I forgot
played.
about my
Okay,
point.
Hold on, just really quick. I'm sorry, showed up is the better word
Mm-hmm.
because Boba Fett's not the first one to ride a Rancor in the Star Wars universe, aside from the people on Dathomir.
That is true.
Could you pull up the footage, please? Well,
I can't see the footage.
no, you're gonna see the footage right
I'm
now.
gonna see
You're
the
gonna see
footage.
it.
on the
Okay.
screen.
While
He's
you're
gonna
pulling
put it up
while
to the
while you're
computer.
pulling up that footage.
You're gonna love this picture, by the way. Here
Okay.
you go.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god. I remember that. God.
AJ, can you describe the picture real quick?
It's
So we have none other than Omega
Miga.
riding Jabba's Rancor when it's an infant. The great and powerful Boba Fett. This is going to be my only troll for this episode.
God.
The great and powerful quote unquote daimyo Boba Fett has been shown up by a clone child.
That he is a
Yes.
clone
Hey,
of.
Boba's a clone too.
He's a clone of
Boba's a
that
clone
child,
too.
sort of.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes it worse. Clone
Yeah.
on clone rivalry. She beat him out.
She beat everybody.
I wanted to say this. I mean, we do need a close, but there is the eye roll thing that I referenced earlier. My biggest issue with the episode was the moment that Grogu comes out to which sets up, I think, what's going to be the story of Mandalorian season 3, but Grogu coming out to calm down the Rancor when it should have been Boba.
Yeah.
When I expected, like, the Rancor is going crazy, it like kind of is having a bit of a tantrum. I expected Boba to come out and like try to calm it down, show that he can like kind of get control of the city in the sense, like he's whatever and all that. He's able to control the Rancor. That's what I expected to see, and
He
instead they use it
demonstrated.
as a moment to they use it as a moment to show Grogu, using the Force in order to protect Mando, which I think is what's going to be the story for season 3, which is going to be Grogu wants to be with Mando. He took the chainmail armor and everything because he chose the Mandalorian way and all that stuff. But I think in this episode, we see Grogu realize that he can do more with the Force than he can with, the armor. And I think that we're going to see him kind of reevaluate the choice he made in this series as the conflict for season 3. That's where I think it's going to be. I think he's going to end up going back to Skywalker.
Just real quick though, I don't think that it was bad enough that the Mandalorian really just stole the show for like the last half of the season, but you really didn't need Grogu in this episode. Could have just
You
saved
didn't
that
at
for
all. You
Mandalorian
didn't at
season
all.
3.
You just
You
didn't at
like
all.
he did not need. He was more of a as instrumental, quote unquote, as he played in the ending. He really did not need to be there. He was more of a liability because Mando's like, oh crap, now I gotta protect the kid
Yeah.
while I'm fighting these super uber droidica Scorpion-X.
But Grogu did save Mando
Oh god,
when Mando was on the floor, prone and doing absolutely nothing.
I
And
hated
the
that. Oh
Scorpion X
my
was about to
God.
stomp him to
Yeah.
death, and he was just
Yeah.
like
And he
this.
pulled out a leg.
And then
Oh my
Grogu
God.
pulled out a little piece of the leg.
Pulled out a piston.
So cringe. Robert Rodriguez, stop.
Mando,
Just
don't
stop.
hurt me,
Anyway,
Scorpion X.
Stop.
Don't hurt me,
Let's go ahead
Scorpion
and
X.
bid our adieus. I will say that I think that the conversation was a lot more civil than I expected it. But to be fair, I think it's because I think we've had two sort of conversations, one at the end of a podcast like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then the group chat one, it seemed way more volatile than this episode so far. So I do appreciate that the bashing was a little bit too a minimal.
Amenable bashing. All right.
There you go.
Alrighty then. So I guess I'll sign us off. Thanks once again, y'all.
Yes,
for
sir.
Joining us on another episode of the Get Geek podcast. As usual, you know the best way to support your favorite podcast crews is you can look all of our podcasts up at Talons 55 Studios. That's Talons with a Z. You can hashtag that. Look that up on all your favorite social media platforms. But of course, look for this podcast specifically, the Get Geek podcast, and you can find us again same way on all your favorite social media platforms. Please like, rate, share, and subscribe on all said platforms and all your favorite podcast platforms, and give us a review on Apple Podcasts if you would, please. That really, really would be appreciated and help us out a lot. And with that said, I feel like there's nothing left to say, even though there's always more to say. But for now, stay geeky, my friends.
Boba Fett lives.